Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to welcome back this week Dion McCormick, no relation, who's our Supreme Solutions Engineer, as well as the founder of Giant Killer Training. Today, I believe Dion's got 3 examples to go over. Each of them were submitted by email, and I think he's going to have a good presentation for you. But also, of course, we're here to answer your questions. So go ahead and type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. And as a quick reminder, questions can always be sent in advance to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. So let's get started. Hello, Dion. Are you there?
Yes, sir. You hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Let me go ahead.
Excellent. Excellent. Go ahead and show my screen. Well, first and foremost, thank you. Good to be back. Had a great trip. Now school is started. Summer is over. Literally today is the first day of school today. So everybody's checked in doing their stuff. So we're back to work. Well, sort of. I feel like I'm an IT expert setting up iPads and computers and Zoom meetings, and it's like pretty heavy duty. Oh, yeah. So thank you everybody for joining us. We always enjoy having you here. And again, our primary purpose every week is really to support you. And in fact, this week's content came completely off of a series of questions we received through guides at alphasoftware.com. That's guides at alphasoftware.com. So if you have questions, comments, etc., make sure to send them there. That's a real fun, that's a good place to go. And we'll do our best to try and help you by collecting that information, doing presentations, doing demonstrations and things along those lines there. So we do appreciate those, and we do appreciate the individuals who sent those questions in for this weekend. We're going to dive into those in a few minutes. But before I do that, a couple quick things is first, just make sure Transform continues to improve, increase its capabilities, lots of new capabilities. And there is a weekly Transform, basically Transform Tuesdays, which Dave presents. And I can't say enough about how fun that is. There's just so many things you can do with Transform along with Alpha, and it covers both of those capabilities there. So between our webinar today and the Transform on Tuesday, pretty much so covered. So if you're interested, please let us know if you'd like to get added to that invite list, and so you can attend those webinars, and Dave will get you set up on there. I don't think do they send it to guides? I think it's
send it to TF service, as in Transform service at alphasoftware.com. That's also the tech support for Transform as well. But if you send it to guides, we'll get it also. So
yeah, thanks. We'll do our best to get you on there. But I highly recommend it. A lot of really good content, and you'll find many different ways you can use Transform to help build out your solutions for your clients, for your customers, and a whole new opportunities that come with it there. So before I dive into the presentation of the request that we got, I did want to share a little bit of semi-breaking news. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, I love that. That's a new screen for you, isn't it? The breaking news one? I don't think I've seen that.
Well, I've had it for a little while, but this is really, really breaking news. The previous one was, well, we had Alpha Cloud plans that were released, and we have other things that are cooking right now. But the number one new thing is new release is available. And actually, I'm a little behind the curve. I'm sure a lot of people already know this, but on August 11th, we had a official alpha release, and you can go find that release here. It is production, so that's good stuff here. Let me go ahead and put this in the chat real quick. There we go. And really a lot of cool features. I mean, the ability to select styles on the fly, the ability to also use GraphQL, which we'll be going over. Very powerful way to deploy API-centric solutions, and a lot of other really nice, neat new features, capabilities, etc. Ability to use new way to build apps. It's really a good release, very powerful, and been through a huge amount of testing. So it's a very stable situation, which I think you'll really enjoy. So I wanted to let everybody know that's available, and you can download that with your subscription. And to do so, you go to that address I put into the chat window, and from there. But with that said, we're continuing to do new pre-releases. They're now going to be called, instead of pre-releases, we're going to be calling them nightly builds. And this is all towards going to the point where we can fork our capabilities. So we'll have like a stable production release that will just get bug fixes and other things like that. And then you will have a nightly build, which will include all the pre-releases and other things that people want to start testing out before they actually deploy to their production environments. So there's a little bit of a terminology change you'll see over the next couple months as we go towards that. So check that out. And again, this is called the nightly build, and it's at this location here. Let me go ahead and copy that, put that in here so you can see there. But one thing that's really interesting is we have a new universal installer. This will install all products. This is really exciting because, again, we want to make your life super simple in terms of being able to install things. So this new universal installer will install all products, including the developer version, i.e. the application development environment, the application server, and the server for IIS and runtime. So basically all in one, which is really nice, really saves a lot of downloading different versions. Plus, by having a single install, I think the number one issue is that you know you're going off a single set of code. So therefore, when you do the install and you select the different elements to get installed, you're going to get everything in sync, which is super critical for any of your applications there. Notice you do not need to download the universal installer again if you simply run it to run it. So this actually is another cool feature that's built into it, is not only do you not have to go up and get a new install every time, anytime you want to do an update, you just run the installer and it's going to dynamically tell you what's available and go from there. So very, very cool there. And a couple other cool things. And again, this is in the nightly build. And I know we just did production, but we're already hard at work adding some other things. But there's some examples of how to use encrypting to encrypt data in a SQL table and then decrypt it when you show it. And this is one thing that we get a lot of requests around, especially from new customers who are in the medical field or the financial field. They have to be able to encrypt information when it's at rest and then be able to dynamically decrypt it. So this is a very cool feature. There's some really nice videos that you can go check out that will show you more about how that works. And you'll see there's a built-in function for do these things. So something really cool, especially if you have security requirements, any kind of element there, it's really handy. And so that's available in our new nightly build. So you can go check out it there. Also very important is that we do have the calendar component with the calendar layout in our list control. And if you're interested, you can start playing with it. There's a video that shows you about it. And very important is that it's still kind of not ready for full prime time. So you send us an email, we'll send you basically a feature key that will unlock the feature and you'll be able to do it there. So news is new production release. You can use the standard way to download and install that. We now have the new nightly release, which is previously called pre-release. Might have to change the title of the web page here. But in that, we have our new installer, which should make it a lot easier to kind of manage those pieces there. And as always, if you are using Alpha Cloud, you can always deploy onto Alpha Cloud with the latest nightly build / pre-release, because when you create a deployment profile, you can say, send it up on Alpha Cloud, put it at this location, and use this build of Alpha. And that's a nice thing about Alpha Cloud is you don't have to worry about downloading, installing, and doing everything else other than the development environment. You could actually set it up and then deploy on the new release just to make sure there's no gotchas or anything else. It's really handy when you're migrating to a new release. So check that out. And that's, again, part of the Alpha Cloud environment that you can do that. Okay.
So just a quick thing too.
Yes, please.
The universal installer, someone's saying, yeah, well, I've heard on the message board that people are having trouble with the universal installer, and that is true. It's still a pre-release
it's nightly
thing, and even nightly release. So it is not yet the one that we're using in production, but it should be ready very soon. And if you want to test it out, we encourage that. So just so you know, it's not yet the official one.
And thank you so much for people who are testing that out and letting us know what they're finding.
Yep, wonderful. And then the next thing is people are asking about, or do you, is the apps, when we go to a new version, are they backwards compatible? And the answer is yes, they do get tested before we send them out. Although it's not unusual when we do come up with a new release to a day or two later find when it goes into complete wild deployment, someone has found one thing and will issue either a hot fix or another release in that, and then it usually stays at that point for quite a while. And so,
yes,
for those of you unfamiliar with our releases, that's typically how it goes.
And that's what again we encourage that with Alpha Cloud you can just launch and test your app with all the new stuff and make sure it's backwards compatible, that anything you've done in your app will migrate nicely to the new one. Really enjoy that. But thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. So we have 3 quick demonstrations here. One is going to be about using control control bars that include disclosures, which is really powerful. And I'm going to show you a quick demonstration. In that demonstration, I'm also going to show you a real cool control, which I don't think we've given it fully justice, but is the ability to dynamically filter lists to give your users the ability to do that. It's really, really cool there. Second, we had a customer ask us about, a developer ask us about, well, when you start building apps, so after a while, they start getting kind of big, and especially UX components can grow in complexity. So they said, what are some strategies to kind of manage that complexity? So I'll show you a little bit about that today. And last but not least, this is a classic question in terms of grids. How can you iterate through items in a grid and select items in a grid and then take action on that? And I want to show you a little bit about how you can use a couple different techniques to do that. So we have a lot of different demos today, plus we are here for your questions. So please go to the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. In there, you can place your questions. Dave and our esteemed colleague, Sarah, who's joining us, will be reviewing that. And if you have in helping us find the ones and get the answers for you. If not, we'll follow up with you on those posts. So first, I'm going to go through the first demonstration since they were the first person to come in, talking about the control bar and disclosures. So to start out, this is a UX component capability. So I'm going to go ahead and select UX component. Again, for people who are new, I'm in my development environment and I've selected new here. And I'm going to select UX and I'm going to click next. Now I could use a pre-defaulted template, or I could create my component like a template I like, but I'm just going to go ahead and click OK just to get started. I'm going to start with a empty blank UX builder. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'll go, oh, I've got to actually, interesting, I've got to save it before I have to put some components on there. Now I'm going to use panel cards and stuff, and as I've demonstrated in the past, you could go down here to panels and start clicking and adding stuff, or use quick panels, but I've got a pre-made save set of controls that I put together. So this is a great technique just to leverage, is that you can select a series of saved controls, save them to your library, and reinstantiate them at any time, which help you speed up the process. So for instance, I'm going to click load controls from library, and I got that selecting the menu here. And I'm going to select demo panel layout and click OK. And now I have my demo panel layout that's being developed for me. So you'll notice that as a panel layout, it's got a panel header with a control bar and some panel cards there. So I previously created this, and then I did the save selected controls after I selected them. Just kind of selected them and did there. And once I've done the save selected, then I can reinstantiate them this time. Again, these little things add up over time, especially, and also you make sure everything's consistently structured from application to application. So it's pretty handy. So I'm going to call this CB, let's call it list dynamic filter. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here. So I built my basic panel card, doesn't do anything yet. So the idea behind this, and where the question came from, is let's say I have a list control. So I'm going to go ahead and put a list control in here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a list of customers. And I'm going to use the quick setup genie just to connect it to my demo Northwinds connection. So this is a standard connection string that we include, or you can pre-create in the system, because we include an MDB file to do that. So I'm selecting that, selecting the table I want it from here, and select some items for the fields. I'll just select a few just here for, okay, great. And I don't need a detail view or search part right now. I'm just doing basically just kind of a lookup list, not really editable at this time from there. So I put it in there. I'm going to go ahead and fill the container because I want this list to take over all of what's in panel card 2. And I'm going to make my compact theme here. I've already selected Alpha Blue 2, so I'm using one of the nicer new themes here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a preview. And in a moment, you'll see I've got my list over here on the right, my other panel card's empty, and I've got a nice little display, and I can select things, etc. It does not do editing. I could do that, but just show that. Now, what I want to do is I want to use a really cool built-in component to be able to let the user filter this list control. So what I'm going to do is go to controls, and I'm going to select my panel card number 1. And this is where I'm going to put that control. So now I'm going to go over and I'm going to go down here to my data controls. I'm going to scroll all the way down till I get to more. As you can see, we add controls all the time, and we've stripped the ability to put them all in here. So we click more, and you'll see we have our advanced list search function. This is really cool, and I wanted to highlight that today along with some user interface stuff. So I'm going to click OK, and I'll call this advanced list search. So put that in there. Now I've set that in there. You notice it's a single little control that's inside my panel card. I'm going to go ahead and double click on that to modify it. And it's going to ask me, well, okay, you're going to do a search on a list. Well, which list do you want? Because I could have multiple lists on here. So I'm going to click on this list and select list of customers. So it's pointed now. This control is pointed at this list of customers. Now what it's going to ask me is, okay, great. What kind of fields do you want to do the searching on in the list of customers, and how do you want to present those? So I can click here and click add field. This will show me my different fields that are in my list control. So let's try customer ID. And then it asks me, well, how do you want to search that? Because there may be different ways you want to search. For now, I'm just going to use text box, but you can do things like combo list, suggestion box, all these things there. So I'm going to add a couple more real quick so I have a few of them. I'm just going to make them all text box for now. And last but not least, I'll do it and do, did I do company name? No, text box there. Great. So I've told it what list to search and what fields to search on. And then there are a whole bunch of other settings. And there's a lot of really cool functions that are built into here you can explore. We could probably do a full session just to kind of explore it in more detail. It's really powerful, but the documentation is really good. So click OK. So now I've added my advanced search, and I got to tell you, that thing is a huge time saver because everybody's like, I want to be able to search my list and all these complex. So you'll see now when I launch it, I've got my list over here and my search field here. And right now, or my search system here, I can click add new search field, and I'll click contact name. I could put in there, let's say BLA. And then I can also click on here what kind of search I want to do. Let's do a contains, and I can click add new search field. Oh, I'm sorry. Then I can click run query. So what I've done is defined a search here. So I can click run query. Oops, did I do that one right? Contains contact name. Oh, let's clear the search and see. Let's try Maria. So we'll go ahead and add contact name, MAR, and we'll do contains and run the query. There you go. Notice it's pulling any MARs in the contact name. But one thing that's cool about this is that I can sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to add another search field, and it's going to be company name. And in this case, let's make it Hanari. So I want to look up HAN. And again, I want to either do a starts with or contains. I can select that, and I can run that query. So now my query filters it here. So as you can see, this is insanely powerful. I didn't have to go in and create a whole big filter function. I could just do all these kind of things here. And the cool thing about it is that the user can sit there and say, oh, I want to and or I want to change the type here, etc. And there is a feature that allows you to save and restore this search. So if you want to save searches and restore them in the future, you could do it on a user basis. And so it's a really nice, awesome control. So that's called the advanced list search. Easy to use. Once you set it up, people really enjoy it there. And again, it allows you to set up, I could do another search field. So it can become very, very complicated over time. You can create very complicated searches and save and restore them, which is really nice for self-servers because you're doing less developing and helping the people out more. Let's go ahead and save this. And so that's advanced search. Now, we got to the point where the person actually asked the question. They go, I love this. I really like this, but I don't want to take up all this screen real estate. So there's a couple different ways to do it was, well, I could put like it in a control panel here, but the question was, well, how would I make it so I could add a button to my control bar and pop it up so I'm able to use that from my control bar using what's called a disclosure. So we're now going to shift gears and show how we're going to move this control into what's called a disclosure that can be triggered from our control bar there. So if you have questions on what we've done so far, please put them in. We'll come back in a little bit, but let me go into design. And now we're going to focus on the control bar here. So hold on one real quick. I want to adjust something real quick. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our control bar. And as you can see right now in our control bar, we have only one item called HTML title. And that's what just is that little piece of text that's up on my control bar. Now, there are some really good documentation, obviously, but what I want to focus on here is something called disclosure. So control bar has a really super awesome feature, which is very powerful, especially for mobile applications, but is applicable for desktop web. And that is the ability to kind of have areas pop out, like pop-up windows or sliding windows, etc., that are available from the control bar. So you can kind of encode content in the control bar. Very, very powerful way to do it there. So I'm going to go here to disclosures, and I can add a disclosure, and I'm going to call this search disclosure. And once I've done that, now this is a sort of like an area or a set of content that can be dynamically displayed. Now, there are three ways you can do a disclosure. You can do it through HTML, injectable, container, or template. And all three have their own powerful, but the one that's most powerful here is called injectable container. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that is in a moment. So again, what a disclosure is just a set of content that allows it. Now, if I use HTML or template, I actually go in and put it here. So in here, I'd put my HTML, whatever it has go there, etc., and do there. Problem with that is that's a little bit old school. You kind of have to code, and it works for certain things. Like if you just want to put a GIF in there or something, you can just do that, and that's really simple. What I would rather use is injectable content. So I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to go ahead and save my control bar. And I'm just going to go here to first, I'm going to go to my panel card number 1. And I don't want to see panel card number 1 because it's taking up all that space. So I'm going to say my layout size is 30%, and I'm going to do a collapse after. So I'm basically docking this whole panel card. So it won't show when the user is there, but the content is still there. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to this list search. I'm going to go over here to containers, and I'm going to put a container around that search. Now, as you can see, we have many types, but one of the key ones here, and we've talked about it, is injectable content. And I'm going to go ahead and insert around here. Okay, so it's called injectable 1. I could rename that if I want. So basically, think of it as just a container that holds a different set of controls. So you could put in here a whole form. You could put in any of your data controls. You could put in everything else. And the important thing about an injectable container is the following: is first, it is invisible when the user sees it. So if I hadn't used panel cards and I just put this list and this container on there, then only the list will show in my screen. So anything inside of an injectable container will be hidden by default. The idea behind an injectable container is I can take a set of content and inject it into somewhere else within my system. So now I've got my injectable container called ALS, or called the injectable 1, which holds that information here. So now if I go in and do a quick working preview, you'll see since I docked my panel card, and even if I had not docked it, it would have disappeared. So now I'm using all of my screen real estate for my list control, which is really, really handy and nice because the user gets to see a lot more rows of data or columns of data and a lot more content. Very important on smaller form factor devices. So now that I have my injectable container, and I can now say, okay, I want this to pop up when I hit a button in my control bar. So let's go in our control bar. Let's go back to our disclosures here. And I'm going to say enclosure type injectable container. And then it's asking me which container. And I'm going to select injectable 1. So now instead of me having to lay everything out inside here, anything I put inside here will show up in this disclosure wherever I place it. So think of it as sort of a hidden container that I can just dynamically put somewhere else whenever I need it. So now that I have my disclosure set up, basically it's an area that's going to show here, I can now go and decide to add a button on my control bar to show that disclosure. So I go back here to items, and you'll notice we have one item right here. I'm going to add a new control bar. I'm going to go button, disclosure, show. Now I probably would say disclosure ALS show. So I'm showing that list search there. Now you'll notice we have different types of items here. One of the most important part, especially for this demonstration, is disclosure button. So I'm going to do it, and a disclosure button is sort of like a pre-made item that understands how to talk to and work with disclosures. So I'm going to click OK. So now I have my new button here. First thing I'm going to do is it's going to ask me, oh, okay, what disclosure name should I select? So I'm going to select my search disclosure that I put. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here. And I'm going to come back and show you a little bit more about this in a minute, but I'm just going to scroll down here to the button settings. You'll notice currently text only. Well, I don't want a bunch of text in my control bar. I just want a nice little icon. So for this button, I'm going to change the button layout to be a image only. And I'm going to go here to the icon, and I'm going to go to SVG, select here, and I'm going to put in here, and I'm going to put this little filter icon here. So basically, when this button is shown on my control bar, it's only going to show that. So now I've got that. So now I have my disclosure button. I've got told it I want to show it only as a little icon. And most importantly, I pointed it to my, where did I point it? Oh, where did I point it? Excuse me. Oh, to my search disclosure right here. I'm sorry, disclosure name is where it's there. Now I've created the item, but it doesn't actually show up on my control bar. So I need to go over here to control bar layout. And then I'm going to go ahead and edit my first line here, and I'm going to add it over here on the right-hand side. So I clicked add. There's my new button here. Click OK. And now, and in fact, I can just go ahead and show this way. You'll see my control bar is going to have a little piece of text on the left and then a button here. And remember, we've done a demonstration a couple weeks ago where this can dynamically show and hide based on the state of your application. So maybe someone doesn't have the right to filter, or it's only filterable in a certain scenario. So I've got my layout. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now I'm going to show you in a moment. I'm not done yet. There's a couple little adjustments that we have to do, but let me go ahead and show you what we have so far. We created our injectable container. We've hidden it. We went into our control bar, created a button that will show, well, first we created a disclosure that pointed to that and a button to show that disclosure. So we're going to go in here. So now you'll notice we have, excuse me, our control bar, got that nice little icon right here. And watch what happens when I click the icon. Interesting. Well, something did happen. I know it may be hard to see for everybody, but when I click here, you'll notice this area is kind of like light colored, and you actually start seeing the field name ALS, which is what was on top of the control. So what's happening is that when I click here, it is actually showing the disclosure, which in turn is showing the content there, but I have to change how it's showing it. And that's one cool thing about disclosures is there's different ways to show it. Sometimes you want to keep, like for instance, let's say you just had like a single search field. Well, you may not want to cover up your content. You may want to click here and have it show temporarily, and then when it's done, go away. But we need it to kind of pop up and show below it. So let's go back into design. I'm going to go into my control bar. And this is really one of the key aspects is I'm going to go here, not to disclosure. Disclosure just kind of tells what the content is. The button actually tells you how it's going to show. So I'm going to go back here, and you'll notice we selected the disclosure name, search disclosure, and then we have display type. And the display type is what kind of dictates how the disclosure will be shown. So you can see there are a whole bunch of different ways to show that disclosure. And right now I have expand after. Now, huge amount of help tests here. To be honest, go through and kind of play with them. You know, a picture's worth with 1,000 words is just go through and change those. Now, what I would like to do here is I have this one here called outside after, and I'm going to go ahead and use that one. But as you can see, you could do screen type left. You could put it in an explicit location. You could have it fly out. Play with it. Have fun. You'll see some really cool effects by using this different techniques, but I'm going to go ahead and pick outside after. So all I did was I didn't change anything about my disclosure. I didn't change anything about my form in my injectable container. All I did was say, when you click this button, show the disclosure in a different method called outside after. So let's go ahead and save that. And we'll do a working preview. And we go here. Going to go ahead and click here, and you'll notice, here we go. Got my search field, but you know, something's off here. So first notice that now I have a nice, cool way to do it. If I don't like that way, let's say I didn't like that way. I could go right in here. Let's try another one just to kind of demonstrate since we're here. Let's do a fly out. Let's see if that works. Let's see what that looks like here. But we still have a flaw we need to fix, but it's very easy to fix. It's kind of a, and you'll see, fly out. I like that. That's kind of what I was looking for. That experience of I've clicked the button and it flies out here. Then I can click here and start modifying it and do other things here, etc. But you'll notice something. It kind of doesn't look right. It's not working just the, I mean, that's confusing. I mean, I have to look over here. Now, what's going on is that this disclosure by default, when it is shown, inherits the class information from the control bar itself. So often that's no big deal. That's great. You want kind of the same color background, etc., or similar color background, etc. But other times that can be a problem. And in this case, it is a problem because when I click here, that CSS is conflicting and not allowing me to see the information properly. So let's go back to design. Let's go into control bar. So the way we resolve that is we go back to the disclosure, and the disclosure does have the ability to tell it a override class name. So this is an override class name that will be applied. So instead of just inheriting what the control bar is, it's going to add a class name to that. So when it displays properly. So I'm going to click here. As you can see, we have a whole bunch of defaulted one, but the one I want to look for is called menu, and you can add your own. You could create your own, but menu is the one you want to use if you just want like a standard kind of blank background. So I'm going to go ahead and find menu. I'm going to double click here so it selects it here, and I'm going to click OK. So now it's telling the system, hey, when you go to show this control bar, this disclosure anywhere in the system, please use this class instead of just inheriting the class that's there. So now we click OK, save that, and let's go ahead and do a working preview. Go ahead and click here, and notice now we have more of what would be a normal form. So I can click here. There's my thing here. I can contact name. I can do HAR. I can select this. All the menus are doing there. I might need a little bit more space. Notice my space is too limited here. So I might need to use a different control bar kind of background. So let's go back and just change that real quick. And I'm going to go back to our other one. Let's go back to our items. Remember, we changed that by using this. So we'll do an outside after. And we'll go here. So it's a little, playing to get the exact way you want it to display. But once you get a feel for it, it's pretty straightforward and easy to modify. We'll go here. We'll go ahead and add a new search field, and we'll go HAR. And we'll select this. I'm still seeing that. I must, so I have to play with that a little bit more. Maybe we can do, I know, we'll just adjust it one more time. Let's go ahead and just do screen top. That one I know for sure works. So do from there. There we go. Add search field, customer name. There we go. Contains HAR, run the query. And now I can click out and there's my query. Now, if I go back in, you notice that's remembering the state of my form. So I could change this to something else, clear it, etc. And so as you can see, it's really nice. So there's a little bit of a play with it, but that's how you do it. But the key here is twofold. One, this is an incredibly powerful component. I mean, it saves hours of you writing your own filtering and other methodologies there. Two, using the injectable content, if I need to make a change, I can just go in here and say, you know what? I want to put a little piece of static text on here saying, this is the super cool search. And maybe I want to add a couple other buttons or do other things there. All I did was add it here. And now when I'm running it, I don't have to adjust anything else. Go ahead and do here. And notice it now renders all that content and here, and then I can do everything else that I've been doing before. I can get rid of the file name or the field name, etc. So quick recap. First, it's called the advanced list search. You can find that in data controls. called Advanced List Search. Once you set that in there, you just need to tell it what list and what fields you want to search on. And very important too is what kind of thing. You can also set the default. So like, I kept doing there, maybe I want to do a contains. So now it'll default to contains in there. And company name, same thing there. Maybe I do want to do a contain name. So a lot of features built into that. Secondly, in the control bar, we have the concept of what are called disclosures, which open up. Those disclosures can be actually HTML built into it, a template, or an injectable container. I like the injectable container just because it is so easy to manage once you get set up. In order to show the disclosure, we need to have a button called that is a disclosure button, and we need to tell it which disclosure and how I want to display it. And super important, as I showed you before, if sometimes it's okay just to inherit the background. If not, go ahead and just put the class name menu and you'll get that nice white background so that it doesn't impact the controls that are on that injectable container that shows in that there. Once you've done that, add your button to the control bar layout. And now you have a very powerful way to essentially have cool dynamic content. This works really nice both on desktop web, tablets, and phone. The control bar and disclosures are all they're all responsive in nature, so it gives you a lot of flexibility setting these things out. And just remember, when you're playing with it, you might want to play with the types of disclosures, and you can have different ways for them to appear and stuff like that. They're really fun, and once you got to get a handle on them, they're super easy to put together and put on your system, and they'll add a lot of nice sort of features for your users on using that. So that is my first demonstration. The other two will take a little less time, but I wanted to make sure we stopped for a minute and had any questions. I do want to make sure we get to those other two, but
sure. Yeah. Okay. So the question is has to do with the injectable container, and it's as follows: do you need to put the injectable container inside a panel card? Could it be on its
hearing
own, just
really
in the panel layout?
choppy.
Oh, bad
I'm getting
audio.
really choppy audio. Is that me?
Hello, testing 1 2 3. Oh, it says my audio is choppy. Am I back or not really?
Let's see. Did I get any text from anybody saying nobody's been able to hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, Sarah, I'll take you off. Sarah, you're unmuted.
So yeah, Dave, you were choppy. Dion's fine.
Oh, I'm so sorry,
Am I
guys.
back
I'm
or not
getting
really?
really choppy audio, but I think it might be on my side. And I hope I didn't lose you a while back ago.
No, we're good. Hang on a second.
Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yes, Dion, we can hear you fine.
Wow, I hope I haven't been talking to myself for a while. Well, I've texted the crew there. I'm going to keep talking in case it's coming through
Hello,
okay. I
testing
hope
one
it
two
is.
three. Is my audio back now? Hello, testing 1 2 3. Hello, this is a test. Dion, I can hear you too.
Wow.
In the
Too
twilight
much,
zone of webinar.
our internet bandwidth's a little tough today. Dave, I sent you a message via Skype. I'm not sure if that's getting through. Just to check from an audio
Right, hang
standpoint,
on a
because I can
moment.
keep going.
We're
If
gonna
you guys are
fix
getting
this.
good audio, I can just dive into the next
Try
there. I can dive into the next
volume
presentation, and then we can kind of
and
maybe have
volume.
to cover some of the questions
Mhm.
later. Or okay, I'm going to log out, log back in, everybody, real quick, just to see if I can get the audio back. So bear with me.
Dion will be right back. Hopefully my audio is coming through okay at this point.
Yeah, it is. I
Excellent.
don't think he could hear us.
No, he couldn't hear us. No.
So it must be on his end.
He's much worse at answering questions when he can't hear us, I found. But that's a logistical thing, maybe.
Yes, that's a problem.
Yeah. All right, he will be right back. Oh. There he is. Let me just put him as an organizer. Take him off mute. Make him the presenter.
I'm unmuting.
All right.
Okay,
And
now.
I can see your screen. All systems go.
Okay, only concern was you guys, were you able to hear me earlier or was it?
Oh, no, we heard you the whole time. So
okay,
that
good.
was fine until I started talking, then it got choppy.
Yeah, strange.
And so you had just finished the
Yes.
first example, and it had to do with injectable content. And the question that we had from the audience is, do you have to put that injectable content into a panel card? Can you just put it up here? Let me just find the actual question. Can you just put it in the panel layout itself?
The issue I'd see is, I will show you this here. I think if it's coming through okay.
Yep.
I'm going to move that down here. Now this is set for fill container. So let's see if it gives me an error. It may not, because it may be smart enough to just ignore that. So the answer is, I think well, we'll see here. Let's do a working preview. Yep, that seemed to work fine. So the answer is yes, you could put that injectable container with your list in the same panel card. Even though I'm telling the list customers that fill container, I think it's smart enough to say, oh, I'm just going to ignore the injectable container, because this is by default a hidden container, and everything inside it will always be hidden until you show it. And in this case, we show it in a different location. It's not actually showing up here.
Fantastic.
Good question.
So that was the only question that was directly related to this particular example. We do have other questions as well. So if you want to go to the other examples, and then we'll try to tackle them all at the end.
Okay, so the second one, this one will go fairly quick here, was the question was, okay, I've got a UX component, it's growing pretty complicated, and that will happen over time. You're trying to do an enormous amount of stuff, especially when you are have different sub-modules and things like that. So there are two major ways to handle this, and the following is, and it depends on, there's one caveat on there. So I'm going to go through example here. So let's say I have a UX control here, and I've got a bunch of controls, etc., on here. And over time, they're growing. I'm getting many more there. Well, I may want to maybe break them into parts. So one of the key capabilities in Alpha is the ability to do what's called an embeddable, let me find that real quick, embedded object. So I can have a master UX, and then I can say, you know what? I want to put in that dynamic filter I just created. So let's see, we'll go CB. It's called, yeah, there we go. So you'll notice now when I run this, I've got my other content and then my other UX here, and that has all the features that I want. Notice there's a little issue about they both have to have the same styling. The top one doesn't have compact. But you notice that I was able to quickly embed another whole piece of content into here. So now, whenever I need to do this, I can just double click on this. Takes a minute here. I can make my adjustments, do whatever I need to do, save it, deploy it, and then the next time this runs, it will go ahead and re-render it here. So that is one method to break it. You can essentially break them into smaller pieces. And there are ways you can talk between them, because you can set up arguments on UXs. Remember, with an UX, you can go to properties and have arguments. And arguments are, think of them as kind of variables for a UX. You could pass it through session variables, but session variables can be a little tough if you have multiple tabs open, you don't want to step on them. But you can set arguments, and you can pass arguments into embedded objects and other things like that. And there's a whole set of like refresh commands and things like that if you want to do it. So option number one is to actually embed your object into a UX, thus breaking your master UX, your top level, down into smaller pieces here. Now, there's another option to do that. Go ahead and delete that. Is the following, is that I'm going to go ahead and put in my, see, save a lot of time just by doing this. In a moment, I'll add those in there. Come on. Wait, did I not select the right one here? Let's go. Load. There we go. Okay, and I'll just move these things down in here. Let me add a quick button here. Now, I could put the embeddable object there, but it may be I have 4 or 5 different objects I want to use. So the other method you can do is you can go to other controls here. Let's get rid of that. And I can put in a button here. And I'll just say load. And let's make a quick change here. At the top level, I want to make it compact. That's why it looked a little strange before. Going to go button load, add a new action. I'm going to say UX. So you'll notice there's open a UX component. I can select that same component I had before. Now what I can do is down here in the target area, I can actually say put it into a panel and put it into panel card 2. So now the nice thing about this is that I don't have to load that up front. So I'm not taking that hit about loading, but I can then click this button and then load my sub UX. And again, all the features and everything else you need will work the same within the system there. So that's option 2, is by dynamically loading it. If you want to, if you had like a bunch of pre-made panel cards in here, what you can do is, let's go ahead and give you one more example of how you may want to do this. I'm going to add another panel card. And this is just to save time for your folks. So I'll go to other controls and I'll put an embedded control object. And I'll do my CB. Now what I'm going to do here to panel card number 3 is I'm going to say my layout size is, say, 80%. Oh, geez. 80%. And then I'm going to go ahead and dock it, collapse after. And I'm going to go ahead and add another button in real quick here. I think there's a little lagginess on my network, so that's what's causing all these problems. And I'll call this load 2. I have to put that up in the right spot. Now what I want to do is load 2. Instead of actually loading it, I'm just going to say panel actions, set active panel to that panel card 3. So I'm not actually loading it. I'm doing an embedded object here. So now when I run it, what it's going to do is, behind the scenes, you're not seeing it, but it's loading up that panel card with the object. It's not shown, it's kind of hidden off here. And then when I click here, I'm going to actually show that panel card, and there's my information there. Now notice something, this is very important. Notice when I go work preview, do I see my fields? No, there's kind of a lag. And the reason that lag is because that embedded object is being loaded. So you either want to notify the user or you want to use a different technique, which is, if I click on here, check this over here. Notice this panel card is going to be hidden, and this object in there is going to be hidden. I can say delay render till visible. And this is important. If you had 5 or 6 pretty complex other UX objects in there, the system would look like it locked up for a while it loaded all that. So I'll go ahead and click here. Okay. And I'm going to go to working preview. So you'll notice first and foremost, it opened up a little quicker. Didn't see a lot, but a little quicker there. Now watch when I do load, you'll notice that you're taking a little bit of a hit while it loads that up from there. So, you got to decide when that hit will get. It's either up front, where you want to load everything up at one time, or later on. So those are the 2 different ways you can handle that kind of thing. So option 1 is break your UX into multiple sub UXs, put them into your interface here. You have to look at the loading time there, and you can time together with arguments. Option 2 is go ahead and create them, but then dynamically load them into panel cards when you need them. And thus you kind of get a little, that first one's going to show up immediately, and then you'll see a little bit of a lag while it loads in the other ones. But over time, once they're loaded, as long as the person doesn't navigate away from the page, they are going to be available. And next time you click that panel card load, it's going to be instantaneous. Like, for instance, let's go ahead and show this again. And I'll show you here. So I'm going to go to the example where I'm going to click here and say load. And notice it's loaded here. If I click load again, it's going to load a little quicker because a lot of the content's already down, and it's pretty smart about deciding what it needs to re-download. So you'll see over time it will get faster. That initial hit is always bringing stuff down and having it available, then the system trying to optimize it from there. So that's how to break your more complex UXs into smaller sub using the embeddable concept. And you can either embed them right up front or use load techniques to load them on the fly. Very, very handy. And let me guess, I'm losing your audio again.
Nope, I wasn't
Oh no,
talking.
we didn't. Yay. Okay, good.
And we heard you on top of all of that. So yeah, fantastic. So I don't see a specific question about part 2. If you want to go into part 3, and then we'll handle
We'll do that.
questions.
We only have a little bit, but we'll go ahead and do that. So let's go here.
Sounds good.
Okay. So part 3 was following. Let's say I had a grid. So I'm going to create a grid component. And I'll just go ahead and start with an empty grid. I'll go here to quickie. I'm going to do this fairly quickly because we don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to go connect, select my customers. We love customers. Okay, put it there, save that as grid loop records underscore grid. Okay. So we'll go into working preview. And we have this grid here. Here's my customers, etc. All good there. Now, what I want to be able to do is add a button where I can loop through these items and read the values of it. Now, I also want to make sure that I can only I loop through the ones I want to. So I'm going to go into properties here. I'm going to search my properties for my grid for checkbox. Okay, so we have something called has checkbox select column. So I'm going to enable that. So that's a neat feature. By doing that, it immediately, in a moment, adds a new checkbox. So I can actually dynamically check things off what I want, or I can say select all. Now, the nice thing about this checkbox is that it gives you a very straightforward way to basically edit or read what has been selected in my list. The concept was the person wanted to show a set of records in a list, and then based on those records or a subset of those records, make a call to the database and do some other updates and stuff. So maybe I wanted these 3, I wanted to click a button that said change status of these 3 or change some value on those 3. So they wanted an Xbasic script that would basically run to find the unique variables of each of these rows, i.e. the primary key of each of those rows, and then be able to write using built-in Xbasic, write some inserts or updates or do something like that. So we need to do 2 things. One is first we need to add a button to this that will call an Xbasic function to do that, and then a little code in that function. So first thing I'm going to do here is go into properties. I'm going to search for my action. I'm going to go through this fairly quick, but this will be posted so you can go down and rewatch it. So I'm going to, a grid has what are called action buttons. I can create an action button. So I'm going to call it loop, and I'm going to call it, and I'm going to put the text there, loop. And when this is going to be a button I'm going to put on my grid. And when I run the JavaScript, I could code it, but I'm just going to add here an AJAX callback. And what this will do is call a backend function to execute something on there. So I'm going to call this loop records. Okay. Now, I don't have to write that function because I can click here for create function prototype, copy that, open my declarations, paste it here. And those are just some shortcuts. Basically, this creates a defaulted, ready to go with some sample code. Number 2, this opens up basically the Xbasic pane that's associated with this. So I'll show you where that is now. So now I've got that button loop. When I click it, it's just going to call that backend function on the server and do what I need to do it from there. Need to do one other thing to actually show that button. This is similar to the control bar. I have to go here to the freeform edit regions. There's my button. I put it there, and it's going to show up on top of my grid. So this is pre-UX, everything else. It was your way to show stuff around the core grid. Later on, there's more powerful techniques. But I created my action button, created a function in there. So now it doesn't do anything yet, but I'm going to go here to working preview. And I'm going to click loop. It actually, you'll see there's like a little circle. It's actually called back to the server and run something. but it's not actually doing anything, but showing that there's my button, it's showing above on top of it, and it is running that function. Now we can go over here to Xbasic functions, and here's that function I pasted in here. So a couple different options. I'm going to focus first on the first one. Notice here that I have some pre-defaulted text. And the one I want you to show here is, for instance, the grid filter. And it will show you how that grid is filtered. So if you've added any kind of filtering to your grid, you can get that. So if someone wanted to say, oh, the user's going to filter the grid, and then I want to use that filter to select a set of records to perform something on it. Well, this is a nice, easy way to do that, where you can just basically get the grid filter right here in here and then act on it from there. Now, what I'm going to show you is a little different. I'm going to use a pre-made script. Basically, what I'm going to do is pull what items the person has checked and then show that to the user. So bear with me while I grab that code. I'm getting it out there. There we go. It's just taking a moment. I'll go ahead and get that out. My handy dandy there. Okay. So, and by the way, if you would like a copy of this, I'm going to paste the code right now into the chat window. So in case you want that, it's in the chat window right away, but I will also have this available if you'd like. Remember, we're using the data source, a demo Northwind, that's the built-in one. So there's instructions on how to do that. So let's go back to our Xbasic function. I'm going to go ahead and paste my code in here. Okay, so how does this work? This is what's important here. Notice here you have something called e.checkboxrows.count checked. So when I went in here to properties and I enabled the checkbox capability in my settings, where was that? I think that was up here. I like to search, so it saves me time. There we go. Has checkbox select column. Now when that enables a whole bunch of features, I'm going to go back to my Xbasic. So the first one is this is going to give me how many rows are selected. So that's, I can say, like, did they select any rows at all before I run this function? So I'm saying if they did, then it's count. I'm going to put a debug in here so we can walk through this real quickly. So now what I'm going to do is for the number of rows, I'm going to walk through that. And you notice I'm building up another thing called e.checkrows.key. And so there's a little more documentation. If you look up for checked rows, it'll show you. But basically what this is doing is building up a little statement here to pull each row. And then out of that, I can get the value of that row. And in my case, the value I want is the unique ID. Because once I have that unique ID in this loop, I can then do a quick SQL call to update that record or do something to it. So let's go ahead and just go ahead and show you how this works real quick. Oops, line 26, put a little thing there. There we go. And we'll just walk through the code. So first thing it does is, remember, we added our button. All it's going to do is run that Xbasic. I'm going to select a couple things here. I'm going to click loop. This will call that function. It's hitting that debug. So now we're inside of our function. So I can sit there, and first thing I can do is step, get the row count. 3 rows were selected. So now I can use that information whether I want to proceed. So now I'm going to click step. It's said, okay, row count is greater than 0. So I'm going to go here, step here. So now I'm in this loop, and so I can get the key value. And notice what it's doing is it's building up this string. So key value is equal to E checked rows, key 1, the row number 1. And then, or I'm sorry, the row number and 1. I know this is a bit cryptic, but it's just how it was built from there. Now notice what I'm doing is I'm evaluating that using a key thing or a built-in function called eval. And the message now has that unique ID. So basically I'm using this eval key value to evaluate that expression on the fly to get that. Now, if I step again, it's going to walk through the next one. And you can see basically it's just building up a comma delimited list of my primary keys that are available there. Now that I've done that, I can then go ahead and send that back to the user. I'm not going to spend much more time on it. Actually, I have to make an adjustment to my code here. Actually, this is called loop records. So let me go ahead and there. So in this case, what it does is it finds out if there needs rows. For all the rows, it does a circle on them, and then it's going to spit out an alert. So let me show you how this works. Actually, let me do one thing. We only have a minute or so. And I apologize, this was kind of rushed, but again, this is available if you'd like it. So I'll go ahead and go Annotar, blouse, I hit loop, did that work, and it just sent me back my key values that are there. And if I want to, I could select more than there and it would build it up more. So if you're interested, send me this, I will send it your way. But very handy for you to be able to loop through records, grab their unique IDs, and then perform functions with that information.
Fantastic. And you got it done just in time, even though we had technical difficulties earlier.
Yes,
so well
I
done.
apologize.
Oh, no, not at all. Dion, thank you very much for presenting. I want to thank everyone who asked questions today. We have come to the end of our time, but the questions we didn't get to, please send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. We would like to give you the answers directly as well as feature them in upcoming presentations. Until then, have a great week. Take care. Stay safe. Hope to see you at the next Wednesday webinar, at the next Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. Bye-bye.